Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Tips from the Top call on selling today. Today, we are in for quite a treat as we are having a conversation with Senior Executive Director Kaz Aylott. Kaz is from Littleton, Colorado, and she leads the team called the Givers and Tasters. I think this is the coolest company because those leaders that name their teams name them the coolest names. I love that. Givers and Tasters. You all will recognize Kaz for several reasons. First of all, she has the coolest name ever. She's often number one in sales. She's a top point earner for our incentive trips, and she has the best accent. Kaz started with Via One Hope in December 2015, and she has personally sponsored over 50 CEOs to this business. Last year, Kaz sold more than 110,000, and she is well on her way to breaking that personal record again this year. Kaz's husband, Tim, is super supportive, super nice guy. We were so lucky we got to spend his birthday with him in Puerto Vallarta and sing happy birthday to him. And together, Kaz and Tim have two sons, Edward and William, who are 20 and 17. Today, we're talking about Kaz's success, and she is going to share with you all how she's able to increase her sales every month. I think you will be quite surprised when you hear what Kaz has to share with you. So everyone, please help me welcome Kaz Aylott. Kaz, welcome.
Thank you. That was a pretty amazing introduction. Thanks for that, Chris.
Well, you're pretty amazing. You know, I mean, you have so much to share with everyone, and you're really a dynamic personality. And I've known you now for 4 years, and you know, just since I've known you since before we were together here at Via One Hope, and it's been so much fun being able to. I'm also the mother of two boys, so we've shared some stories together too, and it's great to be a mother of sons, isn't it?
Yes, for sure it is.
Yeah, and we do have a lot of stories that we share, so it's a lot of fun being able to share you as well with the community right now. So as you guys heard in the introduction, Kaz is an amazing seller. If you paid attention at all to things that are going on right now and what kind of results we've had in March, you will know that Kaz was number one in sales in March. She sold over $10,000, and she also personally recruited 6 new CEOs in March. So that's pretty amazing to have that kind of performance, and especially in a month when people are still feeling the effects of January and February and some long winters in some areas where we live. Another thing that's significant is that we all know that Kaz was in Puerto Vallarta for a whole week at the beginning of the month. And so, and it was also spring break for a lot of people. So we've heard from many of you the challenges that came with booking tastings and being able to have engagement from your customers and also your team members. So March, of course, we know ended up starting off kind of quiet, but really picking up some steam with our mystery mix pack. So we're going to hear a little bit about the success that Kaz had with that this past month too. But really, you know, I just love for you, Kaz, to share with us what you think, or what really contributed to your success in the month of March. How did you sell over $10,000?
To be honest, it was a bit of a shock to have that high sales for the month. My calendar was not as full as I would have liked it to be. And as you say, you know, we were in Mexico for a week, and with spring break and all the rest of it going on, generally I try and have maybe 2 events, 2 parties, something like that a week. And I only had a few scheduled for the month. A couple of them actually ended up rescheduling. So I ended up with just 2 wine tastings for the month instead of the usual, 8 or so that I do. But I worked hard with the host on those. I had been working with a company for a corporate order that ended up coming in March, and that's kind of more of a long-term thing, just happened to come into the month of March. And then the mystery sale, I mean, that was really a lifesaver. It was, it's an opportunity to reach out to customers and clients that you've had before, and just offer them the chance to get this great deal. You know, we only have that a few times a year, and over the time that I've been with One Hope, which is a little over 2 years, I've built up a pretty good customer database, which I just keep in an Excel spreadsheet. I mean, nothing fancy. And I send a newsletter out to them, posting on Facebook as well, a little bit here and there, and just kind of working on those mystery pack sales. I think that was a big generator of sales for me this month.
That's awesome. So it sounds like you were about to have a pretty ordinary month, something that a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah.
And because you were working so hard on, you were working on developing this relationship with this corporate client, you really had no idea when that was going to happen. But it was a gift that it was able to happen in the month of March. But I love the fact that you brought up congratulations, by the way, on that. That's pretty cool. Nice icing on the cake. But it's also really cool that you mentioned that you took advantage of the mystery mix pack, and that you did, just a very simple follow-up system to go back to them. And it sounds like you really take time to build relationships with people, and that you have developed a great customer base that way. And look at how that worked out for you.
Yeah, I think that relationships are so important in just in business generally, but in this business in particular. And I mean, I don't feel like I'm the best at follow-up by a long way. I'm a bit random about that. I know that I could do a lot better if I had a system in place, and that's something that I kind of strive to being better at. But I think that when you start building relationships, and you see the same people at different tastings, or they're hosting for you, or they're coming to a friend's party, and you're just getting to know them, as it's not that you see them as just being customers, but you start seeing them as friends. Each time you see them, you're developing that relationship. And so when then they get a newsletter from you or an email from you, it's something that they hopefully open up and look at, and believe that you're telling them what a good deal it is. So I firmly believe that building relationships in this business is one of the best things that you can do with your hosts, with your customers, with anyone that you meet.
So true. A lot of people say that people will book tastings, or they'll do things with you because they like you. That's half the battle of being able to be invited to someone's home, or into an event where they're going to be sharing something with people that they trust and that they care about, and so and sharing you. So it's so important that you build that relationship, and and also the authenticity is there, which definitely comes out.
Yeah.
So one of the things you mentioned was, I think you said 8 to 10 events each month. Why do you have that goal?
Why do I have that goal? I'm lucky enough that this is my job. As much as I have a job, this is what I do, and working to have 2 events a week, 2 wine tastings or something a week, brings me lots of things. Actually, it brings me a good income, good sales, but I think more than that, it allows me to just keep my business going. I can focus on getting those events set up, keeping my calendar full, fitting it around my family, which I think is really super important to make sure that you're taking care of your priorities. The business kind of fits in around what I'm doing. Kind of lost track of where I was going with that.
I feel like one of the things that you and I have talked on several occasions, and one thing that I know that's really important to you is that this fits into your life. And so like, how many times do you go out during the week?
To to network and talk to people. My life is, I kind of think about my business a lot, probably more than I should do. Wherever I'm going, it's such a part of me. I believe in what we have as a company so much that it's always on my mind. So I'm always thinking, who can I help with this? So as I'm out and about just living life, or going to see a friend, or shopping in, Target or wherever, then it's something that this is the answer to so many things. If I'm in line with someone at the checkout and they're talking, maybe, you get just into a conversation and they are talking perhaps about their son's soccer team and how they're going on a trip to Arizona, then one hope that can be the answer to how they raise money for their team. So this company and what we have, whether it's purchasing wine for an event or raising money for their school or their nonprofit, or whether it's as a business opportunity, I think that it's always something that comes to my mind, because I think that we have an amazing product. And I think that when you firmly believe in what you have, it makes such a difference in the way that you come across to people. So I don't feel like I'm ever trying to sell what I do. I'm just sharing about what I do. And because I believe it so intrinsically in kind of my being, if you like, that it doesn't come across as salesy. It's just, wow, this woman this is what I imagine they're thinking. This woman that I'm talking to is all about this company that she works with and how they are helping around the world with the nonprofits that they support, and they can help my son's soccer team raise money. And from what she says, it's great wine. They have these winemakers that help them produce this amazing wine. So I think the conversations that I have just as I'm out and about really bring me the connections and the contacts that lead to getting the bookings, getting the wine tastings, working with the nonprofits. They perhaps lead to corporate orders, corporate accounts. So I think the more that you can kind of take it with you, be prepared when you're out and about with a business card or a brochure or a flyer about the sale. With the sale that's on, I had printed up just on a one page, there were 3 little things with a picture and some text, picture, text, picture, text. And so rather than handing those out individually, I would give people that whole page. And then I just said to them, I'm sure you've got a couple of friends that would love to hear about this sale. Tear this into 3 and keep one, and then give the other 2 to a friend.
Wow.
Because they would I'm sure they would love the glitter bottle. They would love the reserve wine. They would love to try One Hope wine, and then perhaps that will lead to something else.
Wow.
So
yeah.
kind of think about what you're doing.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things that I really love, Kaz, is how you said that, you're always thinking about it, but you're not really selling it. And so a couple of things that came to my mind was you are branding yourself as a resource for people, and that you are identifying different needs that people might have. And so I love how you network with people out and about. I love how you go to networking meetings, and I love how you turn things into what is the core of the business, which are tastings, right?
Yeah.
And so, you shared that you do 8 to 10. I think you've shared with me before that you like to do 2 a week because that's what fits into your life and your schedule. And I think also, what is your average? What would you say is your average per tasting when you go and do tastings?
I was surprised when I went back and looked at that. It's up in that the $800, $900, $1,000, a little over $1,000. It turns out to be a really good average of the tastings that I have. When I chat with my host before the event, I honestly don't do a lot of traditional host coaching, but I do chat with my host and find out what her goal is. What's her goal for her nonprofit? So I want to find out, first of all, what nonprofit she wants to work with, or he wants to work with if it's a host. because that is a big part of what is going to bring the sales at the party up. Mm-hmm. So we talk about what that nonprofit is and what her goal or their goal is, raising money. And oftentimes $100 is where they come to, because that's just kind of a nice round number. So $100 in a donation to a nonprofit means $1,000 in sales for the party. So that often is like the first goal that we have for the party, for the wine tasting. And I think it's a pretty realistic goal as well. The host can chat with friends and family that can't come to the tasting. They can chat ahead of time. So as soon as I get a booking, I'll create that party in the back office and I send the host the shopping link. Mm-hmm. So they can send that out to friends and family, and let them know that it's okay to place an order ahead of time. The order will ship right away. They don't have to wait, put the order in and then it doesn't ship for a month or whatever. So I think those little bits and pieces that come in ahead of time can help. Mm-hmm. And then at the wine tasting itself, I always want to kind of put the host not on display, but kind of elevate them in front of their friends, to thank them so much for what they're doing, and ask them, as I'm explaining about the give back that the company has, to ask them what nonprofit they chose and why they chose it. Usually, but not always, usually the host is passionate about whatever her nonprofit is. And as she talks about that, as she tells a story around perhaps how we came into contact with each other at another event for another nonprofit, and then she'll talk about why she picked the nonprofit that she chose. Maybe it's her kid's school, or maybe it's that her son has childhood diabetes, or whatever it is. Oftentimes, her friends and family already know that she has this huge connection with that nonprofit, so they're already kind of on board with the idea of supporting that organization. And so allowing the host really as much time as they want to take to share that story with their friends and family, I think makes a huge difference to the way that people think about buying wine. So now they're not just thinking, oh, I'll get a bottle or two. They're thinking, oh, so when I buy this wine, it's all of these different charities that we're helping with the bottle partners. And I'm helping my friend raise money for this organization that I already know that she supports. And so I think that helps to increase individually what each person is now thinking about purchasing. Mm-hmm. And then when I have conversations with them at checkout, then I have opportunity as well to perhaps upsell a little bit more. That's a long answer to your question. Yeah. Sorry.
Well, no, that's good. I love what you just shared, because you're doing absolutely the right thing, and it's making the host and her charity the star of the event, and really bringing that into it, and having her do the personal testimony, shares her passion. And you're right; these are her friends, these are her contacts, so they're going to be more inclined to feel the emotion tied to it. And it's so important to share stories. So I heard you say that just now about how she gets to share why it's important to her, and people are going to be able to relate to that. So so that's a great tip. That's a great tip. Well, you come across so confidently. You seem so confident in your sales. Have you always been this confident in selling and with your business?
No. I'm a shy English girl, really and truly, underneath all of this. But, I've been with One Hope now for two and a half years. And at the beginning, I was not sure about what I was doing. I honestly didn't want to be selling wine, but I loved the philanthropy of the company. That's what brought me here in the first place, all of the give back that we have. And as I became more confident in the product that we have and the company itself, we have such an amazing thing to offer. So the wine that we have is incredibly good. A lot of times I've heard that when people go to wine tastings for, our kind of business, that the wine is not great. Our wine is amazing. We have these world-class, world-renowned winemakers helping us make our wine. We've got Mary Coyle on board now, working for us, which she's awesome, as we all know. She's incredible. We've got Rob Mondavi Jr., we've got Tony Coltrane. So really well-respected winemakers that are helping us make wine. And that really brings a lot of
credibility.
And confidence to what we have as a product. I know that wine is good. I've tried pretty much all of them, and it's an amazing product. Our gift boxes are beautiful. I mean, they're so well presented. Everything that's in them is a great quality. It's not just kind of filler. So having the confidence to know that the products that I'm offering, and I'm offering them as opposed to selling them, pushing them, having that confidence that I know they're good. When I have a wine tasting, I know that pretty much everyone is going to like pretty much every wine that we have. Mm-hmm. And we have the entry level with the core collection of wine. So whether it's someone that says, I don't really like wine, I'm just here to help my friend out, but I'll try it. And we'll serve the brut or the pomegranate or some, and they surprise themselves because they like it where they perhaps haven't liked things they've tried before. So I have the confidence in that realm, but then I also have confidence with folks who perhaps are more of a connoisseur of wine, and they have a more educated palate, perhaps we'll say. And I know that when I offer them the reserve wines that we have, that those are going to be wines that they're going to love. So we kind of can fit the whole scale with the products that we have. So the confidence that I have now comes from knowing that we have such a good product. It comes from knowing that the founders of the company, so Jake and Tiffany and Tom and all of those guys, are truly who they seem to be. I've been lucky enough to meet all of them a few times now and have conversations with them, and they're authentically who they seem to be. And so when you have people that are living what they're selling, or the idea of what they're selling, then I just think that brings a level of confidence to what you're doing that you can't make up. And I think that people see that from the way that you talk about the company, the way you talk about the wine. I remember Jake saying once that you can't say enough good things about a wine. What you tell people about it, they're going to believe. So if this is tea, but say this was wine, if you say, this is an okay wine, it's all right, I don't really like it, but it's all right, they're going to hear what you say, and no matter what they taste, they're going to be thinking of the words that you mentioned. Whereas if you say, this is one of my best-selling wines, it's a really great blend of Zin, Cab, Merlot, and it supports veterans, then they're going to hear those words and they're going to taste it, and they're going to have a better impression of it. So I always remembered Jake's kind of having that idea of people will hear and believe what you tell them, and then when they taste it, that will support whatever they have heard. So I know that our wine is fantastic, and I tell people that you're going to love this wine, and guess what? They taste it and they do. Mm-hmm. So I have to answer the question.
Oh my gosh, it's been a great answer, because it's developed a couple other questions for me. And I know everybody's starting to put questions in the chat box too, and you're just going to have to get in line because I have questions. Number one, I love what you just said, because first of all, you're right. They're living the dream. I mean, this is not just a story. This is something that we're living out loud, and this is the real deal. And secondly, I love how you, through your experience, because you are out there doing tastings and that's how you're going to get the experience, you're knowing, first of all, what you can serve somebody who doesn't like wine. And it's so interesting that your answer, because I have a friend who doesn't like wine, and she decided to try the wines, and the only one that she really liked was Brut. So you're right, Brut. And then the other thing is you talked to, through your experience, you've learned what the more sophisticated palate would like. And so you have your reserves. So Kaz, I want to know, do you always take the same wines to each of your tastings, or do you change it up?
I change it up. So part of the conversation I have with my host before the party is what kind of wine does she like? What kind of wine does she think that her guests typically like?
Mm-hmm.
So that is kind of a base of where we start. But if she tells me, oh, well, I only like sweet wines, I'm not only going to serve sweet wines.
Right.
So if she doesn't have an opinion, my kind of go-to wines would be one of the brutes to start with. And that might be the regular plain brut, which is fantastic. It's a really lovely wine. But maybe one of the flavored ones, the pomegranate, the peach, or the lemon. So I don't think I've ever done a tasting where we didn't start with one of the bubblies.
Okay.
Because it just gets everyone in the party mood.
Mm-hmm.
The next one that I'll do is usually the Sauvignon Blanc or a Pinot Grigio. So it's a lighter, fresher, more on the dry side wine. And then I'll follow that with the Chardonnay or the Viognier, which is again really popular wines. More of a full-bodied mouthfeel is the way that I think about it. It's like the difference between skim milk and full milk, the Sauvignon Blanc versus the Chardonnay. And sometimes the analogies that you give people help them, and I'm sure I must have got that from Mari at some point. The way that you describe the wines helps them understand it more. If my host wants a rosé particularly, then I'll probably swap out one of those for that. And then with the red wines, the Pinot Noir is so popular and versatile. I love that one. And then I'll do the red blend, because again, that's a great wine. And then the Merlot or the Cab. So usually the Pinot, the red blend, and the Cab. If the host wants to knock it up a little bit, we'll do a reserve or two, or as many as they want to, because people will oftentimes they'll buy what they taste. So if you can help the host decide, because you really want it to be the host choice, so you don't want to out and out tell the host, but you help them come to that decision, perhaps. It would be a great idea if we can serve a reserve wine, because that's going to typically increase sales to the party, and that means a bigger donation for your nonprofit. And usually in most cases, the host is about the donation to the nonprofit. The host benefit is almost not something necessarily that they're thinking. I mean, they are thinking about it, but they're not thinking about it. So rather than focusing on saying, that will bring higher party sales, which means more of a spending spree for you, usually I will say, no, that's a bigger donation for your charity. So in all of that conversation with my host, I'm taking into account, we're going backwards and forwards with what her preference is. So she might say, oh, I love Riesling. Then we'll make that one of them. But the other ones I'll try and complement to have, if we have a Riesling, then we might have something that's more on the drier side. So
awesome.
To kind of mix it around.
That's great. So now with the new Gewürztraminer and the Muscat the Muscat that we have coming up, it's going to make it even more interesting. But those are perfect for spring, summer. So everybody's going to love those too. Thank you for sharing that with us, because I think that it's very helpful to know, and also what your go-to is, I think is so helpful, because you know that if you've got like a framework of what you're going to have, and then you can just kind of swap a couple things out, it's really good. I'm glad you said the red blend, because that's our favorite here in our house. And I think that that's a good entry level for anybody who is maybe a white wine drinker to try red, because it has just enough sweetness to it that it can be very easy and smooth for people. So, I mean, this is not supposed to be a talk about the wines that we love, but don't we love to talk about wine? And that's why we're all here too. And I love that you touched on that the host isn't as focused on the benefits that she's going to be received, but more on the impact that can be made. And I think that that's what makes our hosts different when they're choosing to have a tasting. So another question that came to mind was you mentioned upselling in checkout. How do you do that?
So I always want to be right where the action is throughout the whole party. I don't set up a checkout station way off in the kitchen or anything like that. Although that would seem like, okay, well, that might be a good idea because you can get away from the noise and the bustle. I want to be in that noise and bustle. So when I hear people having their own little conversations, I can jump into that, or I can advise, or I can say, the Pinot Noir that we had today was great, but if you're looking for something with a little more kick to it, go for the San Luis Obispo. It's only an extra $10. So why don't you add one of those in? I really want to have a conversation with every person that's there. And sometimes people sneak out without letting me do that. But most of the time, I would say most people are making a purchase of some kind. I always talk about, so my assumption is that folks are there to help their host raise money for a nonprofit, as well as to come to a fun wine tasting. So my assumption is all throughout the presentation, I'm talking about in your case for a cause, when you are looking at what you're going to fill up your empty box with, you've got 12 spaces to put in 12 bottles of wine. So how are you going to, which wines are you going to choose for your case? I'm not talking about which bottle do you like. I'm not even talking about what half case you like. I'm making an assumption in my head as I'm talking to them that they're going to be getting at least a case of wine, maybe more than one case of wine, or gift sets, or whatever it is. So I think that part, that's just the way that I'm thinking. And that comes across so subconsciously, even maybe that's what folks are thinking about, because those are the products that count for the donation. Mm-hmm. I don't want people buying just a bottle or two or three, because that is, it's not going to help the cause that we're raising money for. Certainly if someone is, and you can kind of tell if someone is uncomfortable with perhaps their budget, and I can only get one bottle now, or they're just kind of reticent about going for a little bit more, then certainly there's something I'm going to respect, and I'm not going to push them to do more than they're comfortable with. But if someone comes to me with an order for, say, 2 bottles of wine, then I'll say to them, I'm more than happy to take your order for a couple bottles. I want you to know that you'll be paying full retail price, and you'll be paying proportionally more for shipping, because for 1 or 2 bottles, it's $9 for shipping, whereas a whole case is $20 for 6 or for 12. Do you have, maybe you have some events coming up? Do you have any birthdays coming up? Any events where you need to have a gift? Because a bottle of wine makes a great gift. You can put it in a cute bag, put a ribbon around it, and you've got a lovely gift. Maybe you have dinner parties coming up. So I kind of paint a picture of how they may be able to make use of more wine than they're initially thinking of. Because what I found is that oftentimes people are just thinking about the wine that they're going to drink themselves. So they're coming to a wine tasting and they're thinking, oh, I like this wine, I like this wine, but I don't drink that much wine, so I'm just going to get 2 bottles, and that will keep me going for however long. By helping them come up with other ideas, then that can help them think about filling maybe a half a case. Or folks will go in on a case together. That's another. I don't talk a lot about that because I don't want to put that idea in people's minds.
Yes.
But certainly if they come to that, thought by themselves, then that's all good.
Of course. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's great. I love that. Terrific advice. And I love how you talk about the upselling for the impact, and then also taking the 1 or 2 bottle and making it a half case purchase and reminding people. And I think that a lot of people too are not thinking ahead that, if they really liked a certain wine, that when they get that bottle, it's 4 glasses or 4.5 glasses and they're done. And so they're definitely going to want to get that wine again. But a lot of times when people come for the first time, they're just not thinking quite that far in advance. It's also probably a good opportunity to maybe approach the chance for them to become a host as well, since they can get their host pack at 60% off, and be able to enjoy some wine that way too. Reminding everybody that once the pours come off, then it's free and the free flowing for the host to be able to serve whatever she wants. Thank you so much, Kaz. One final question from me, then we're going to open it up to everybody else. But people probably may be wondering, well, you also recruited 6 new CEOs on your team last month. So what would you say contributed to this in relation to your sales activities? And what I mean by your sales activity, I'm talking about your tastings or when you're out and about and stuff like that. That's all sales activity. So what did that contribute to you recruiting 6 people?
Yeah, I think that it does. The tasting is where everything happens. So there are lots of ways of working your business: tastings, doing events, doing vendor events, doing corporate sales, working with the nonprofits. But the tasting is where you have people there that you can share everything about the business with. And I'm thinking about the people that came, my new team members that came on board in March. Most of them came from wine tastings. So, and it's not necessarily a wine tasting that happened and then they signed up. One of the gals that came on board, Eunice, had 2 wine parties with me. She had 2 wine tastings. She had one in January of last year, and then she had another one more recently. And so it's kind of has come to the understanding that this is something that she wants to be involved in as more than a host. So I think that the wine tasting is like it's the heart and soul of your business. It's like the meat and potatoes of your business. It really brings everything to you. It's where you're going to get your sales. It's where you're going to get your next bookings. It's where you're going to find those new CEOs, those new team members. So I really think that although the amount of sales that I've had hasn't affected the number of recruits, the number of new team members that I have, it's because of the more bookings you have, the more parties you have, the more people you're meeting, and it's all a numbers game. Mm-hmm. So the more people that you talk to, the more people are going to be interested at some level in finding out more as a purchaser, as a guest, as a customer, as a host, as a team member. So yeah, it's the wine tasting. You just want to do more.
That's awesome. So I love that you mentioned that Eunice has had a couple of tastings herself, and now she wants to be more involved. And I think that that's what we're going to be seeing more and more. And so great message as far as where you're going to get your recruits. So really the secret sauce is wine tastings, developing relationships, and keeping those relationships going, and always being ready with the business too. And believing in yourself, believing in your company, believing in the product. I mean, it all kind of just comes together. So this has been great for me, Kaz. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and go to the chat box and see what questions other people have. And we'll also open it up here for any questions. So Tracy said, great idea for sharing info. Mary said, I'd like more info about how to use the biz as a fundraiser for schools, teams, and etc. She said this can be offline. We can take it offline. If you have anything you want to add to that, Kaz, maybe you can help her right now. And then, and then Tracy asked the question about how do you handle when your host says you can all go in on a case together? Probably, I have an answer for that too. You kind of answered part of that, but this is specifically when the host says you can all go in on a case together. So why don't we take the first one, which is about fundraisers for schools, teams, and etc.
Yeah, so when you're working with schools, most of the time you can't work directly with the school because it's alcohol. And most school districts have a no alcohol policy. But teachers and school staff are dealing with kids. And in my experience, that often means that they like to drink a glass of wine. I know that I do as a parent. So the people that you want to approach are maybe the PTO. They may be a good place to start, or just other parents. You can talk to the teachers. Maybe give a bottle of wine as a gift to a teacher and let them know that you can do a fundraiser with with wine. I mean, goodness me, when my boys are 17 and 20 now, but when they were younger, would I have loved a wine fundraiser instead of a magazine sale or a wrapping paper or a butter braid or all that stuff? You know, you buy those things because you feel like you have to. But if there had been an opportunity for a wine fundraiser to raise money for my kids' school, yeah, I'd have been in for several cases of wine, I should think, on the now and again. So really just talk to anyone, get the ball rolling. It doesn't have to be a big event for the school. It can be a couple of mums that you know who like a glass of wine, and they have the first wine tasting. And then that kind of ripples out the way that things do. So it's just kind of getting your foot in the door. If you don't know anyone that's at that actual school, then you know, you can call the school office and ask who is the president of the PTO or the fundraising chairman of the PTO and approach them. And they're, most of the time, they're pretty open to the idea of at least talking about it. And then you can kind of take the conversation from there. So Mary, does that answer the question, or do you have other questions?
She had another question. She said, since the school isn't a nonprofit, how do we get the money back to them?
So my understanding is that most schools we're able to donate to. They have a nonprofit number oftentimes, depends on the school. But my understanding is that the schools that I've worked with certainly are able to give me a tax ID number that One Hope works with. If you're unsure about it, if it's maybe a private school or something like that, you might want to just double check that. But the schools I've worked with, several schools doing fundraisers for like the soccer team, the golf team, band, that kind of thing. For these are high schools. So I would just double check that with find out what their status is and what their tax ID number is, and you can send that into home office.
That's great. You know, I love that you brought up the different teams, the different organizations within a school too, because so many times that has a separate 501(c).
Yeah.
And so that's a great idea. Awesome information. Okay. Real quick, Tracy had asked, how do you handle when your host says you can all go in on a case together?
You know what? Once it's out there, it's kind of out there. We want this to be a fundraiser for whoever the organization is. So if one bottle is really all that you can afford, then that's, you know, that's fine. We would certainly not turn that down. It's going to help the bottle partner. It's going to go towards maybe a case or a half a case. More, I guess, more helpful than that is if you can have that conversation ahead of time with your host. Let your host know that we're looking for folks to ideally get their own half a case or full case of wine or gift box. And so ask them not to say that. In the same way that I don't want anyone to feel pressure that they have to buy something, but I'll ask my host, once I get to know the host and their personality, I might ask them ahead of time, you know what, let people know that they can come and enjoy the wine. We really hope that they'll consider making a purchase. I don't want to tell them, come along, you don't have to buy anything, it's just a wine tasting, it's just fun. I want my host to understand that it's my business and I'm not just coming to throw a party for them. This is a business where my job is to help them raise as much money as possible for their nonprofit.
Absolutely.
Chris, what's your take?
Actually, it was that one. It was through the host coaching and just giving them some guidelines to say, I'm here as a partner to you to help you have a successful event. So here's a couple things that you definitely want to you know, keep in mind. We're going to try to get you, you know, a nice donation for your organization, and we do it through the Case for Cause and the gift sets. So my job is to help you with that. So you know, sometimes people might only want to get a bottle or two. They don't really have it in their budget, but I would, you know, we don't really want to suggest going in together. Sometimes that's a possibility, but leave that to, you know, me being able to discuss with the individual customers. And then the other thing would be, of course, definitely saying, do not kill your party before it happens by saying, oh, just come, you don't have to buy anything. Never, never, never. That's something that a lot of hosts just try to say to be able to get people there. And I think that it's so much stronger. Give her the words, give her some words to say so that she can invite people with confidence. And and I think a great thing would be to share her passion about the organization and the fact that we are a different type of company, we're a different type of party where we can, offer people a really wonderful experience. So that's how I would do it.
To add on to what you're saying there, sometimes with, I mentioned that I've been with a couple of other companies, and sometimes the host is kind of almost embarrassed to have friends come over and spend their money on things that they're buying so that she can get a host bonus. And so that has sometimes meant that they would be more likely to say, come on over, you don't have to buy anything, don't worry about it, just come and have a good time. With this, it's not just about getting wine and the host getting a benefit. She has the ability to say, we're having a wine tasting fundraiser for this charity that I love to support. So I'd love for you to come and participate in our fundraiser. And that kind of almost lets her off that embarrassment hook of come to my house and drink wine so I can get free wine.
Absolutely. Awesome. All right, I'm going to unmute everybody. If anybody else would like to say something to Kaz or has a question for Kaz before we wrap this up. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, I'm trying to mute myself.
That's all right, but you got a baby in your arms.
She's sleeping.
Aww. Baby.
So you can mute, can you mute me?
Oh, yes, I can. Sorry.
I have a 2-year-old yammering too.
Well, we're going to wrap things up. Does anyone else have a question or anything that they want to share?
Hey, this is Tracy. Kaz, you were always an inspiration. Thank you for sharing all of your information. I love learning from you, and this was very insightful. I jumped on late, but I'm really looking forward to rewatching this and making sure my team sees it as well. So thank you for all of your support and for your great information. And I think I should get a British accent because I think that helps.
That's awesome, Tracy. Thanks for joining. Yeah, that's awesome. Anyone else? Okay, well, I want to thank you guys so much for joining us today. Thank you so much, Kaz. This has been a great education, great for me, and I just can't thank you enough for sharing your time today. And this recording will be available for you guys to all share with your teams later on today. And again, thanks.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.